Hound Dog Steve coming to you from a slightly snowy, slightly chilly Sunday afternoon in the Lotus Land they call Bob Cajun. Getting ready to go to a Super Bowl party this afternoon and watch the big game. Should be good, should be good. But anyways, I wanted to bring you a little bit of information about an issue that's going on in the UK right now and Europe with a shortage of vegetables due to inclement weather, i.e. freezing and flooding. And so the shelves are empty. There's another little part I'm going to put in this video so that you can see. Now, I don't know whether you believe that we are going into a warming trend or a cooling trend. I personally think that we are going into a cooling trend, more to minimum, more little ice age situation. Flaring activity on the sun has slowed right down to virtually zero. There's almost no activity on the sun right now. And as you can see, the weather patterns are in turmoil. I mentioned in my Christmas or my New Year's predictions video how I thought that the thermohaline system in the ocean, the Gulf Stream, slowing down would affect this as well. So the big takeaway from this is that we're going to see these anomalies happening, these seasonal anomalies happening more and more frequently, and they could occur as droughts, they could occur as frosts. We're already getting downspouts of icy cold air, flash freezing. There's been a couple of flash freezing incidents. So this all puts us towards having a way of surviving the cold and the changeable weather. Now I'm going to add a couple of charts here, and they will show you quite clearly when you look at the medieval warming period, the Roman warming period, the Minoan period. Wow, where were the cars then? Okay, where was the population back then? No, there's something else going on here, and these climate scientists have been less than honest with us, and I think it's becoming more and more apparent. And as time goes by, I think this year and next year you are really going to see how crazy the weather can be. And if you go back into weather charts of the past, the weather was unbelievable. The storms, the size of the storms were just off the scale. We've never seen these kind of things before. You know, the jet stream commonly runs between 300 and 400 kilometers per hour. If that touched down to the ground because some polar vortex has nudged it in a different direction and it's been forced under some huge high pressure system, boy oh boy, you know, 400 kilometer an hour winds sweeping the surface of the earth, there is nothing could withstand that. So we are in for a rocky ride with the climate, but the most important thing will be growing food. And so I would like you to think about bearing this in mind. If you go to my other channel, Kawartha Lakes Alt Media, and I'll be posting this actually on Kawartha Lakes Alt Media, even though it's a hound dog video, because there's a whole bunch of how-tos on gardening from my hugelkultur raised beds, and this year I will be adding a greenhouse over the raised beds, and you're going to see how easy it's going to be to turn a simple raised bed into a sealed in greenhouse. Okay, because you're going to want to extend the season and you're going to want to protect your crops. You can see here from the BBC News, iceberg lettuces and broccoli rationed as vegetable crisis hits supermarkets. Due to continued weather problems in Spain, there is a shortage on iceberg lettuce. And this is happening all over Europe. Okay. Let me see. UK suppliers told BBC produce from the continent was being treated like gold. And here are the empty shelves in Tesco. Prices have just about doubled. The Spanish Association of Fruit and Vegetable Producers, FIPEX, said it expected the shortage of leafy vegetables grown outdoors, including lettuce and spinach, to continue until early April. Okay, and so why has this happened? Here we go, a touch of frost in Europe. This is from Horti Daily. And there you go. That is the fields in Spain. The Spanish Costa Blanca and in Italy. That is absolute 100% devastation in Turkey. Okay, we're getting into the Mediterranean regions here. This is really unusual weather, and this is what I've been talking about on my weather videos for quite a while now. Look at these oranges. We're going into a period of extreme weather anomalies. You're not going to know what is going to happen next. We're going to go through the seesawing effect. I mentioned this in my Christmas predictions, and here we are, not even a little while into the new year. Look at that. Look at that. Gone. That's gone. There's no way that is going to market. And you know, we've been told that there are other sources. Okay, so what other sources? And here we go. Snow in Spain, Spanish fields earlier this week. So we've gone from flooding to snow. So you can imagine what this is going to do to prices of vegetables, and not even prices. I think you're going to reach a point where they just won't be available. You are not going to be able to buy vegetables because of this kind of weather. You see, this mass production type of farming is just not going to work anymore because the climate is changing. I personally believe that we're going into an ice age, and you'll see by the next chart that I'm going to put up that the model, I mean, I don't know why they're not talking. This is a simple chart to research and find. I have absolutely no idea why they're not looking at this and going, well, yeah, the weather changes always. It's Beslan. So what you're going to find, just to finish off this little piece, restaurants are going to have a really tough time. If you want to eat out, it's going to cost a fortune. The restaurants are going to have to charge the going price, the going rate for vegetables, and they are going to struggle. California, well, they filled the reservoirs this year, but they haven't been able to fill the gap in need, and so here we have Mexico. Cold weather in the US. The US is also battling cold weather. Due to this and other issues, there is less courgette production than normal, according to one trader. He also states that production from Mexico is also lower. He said that a colleague in Canada was importing very cheap courgettes. So there you go. Spain. Mexico. The States. So this is a serious situation. I do believe we're going back into an ice age, or a mini ice age, or a modern minimum, or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I think we need to pay attention. I think we need to be putting a little back garden in to help compensate, especially your green and leafy vegetables. They're easy to grow. You can do it on a really small plot. And as you know, I've been making a series of videos from my garden to explain how you can put a small plot in and make it very, very productive. This is the first chart that I wanted to show you. This is from the Greenland ice core samples, and we'll just scroll down a little bit. And so this goes from present time, right here, way back 4,294 years to here. So this is what they're talking about with global warming, and we have barely come up to the median temperature, the moving average. But when you look at the Minoan warming, the Roman warming, the medieval warming, you know, the Minoan warming was 3,500 years ago. Okay, there was no cars during the Minoan warming, or the Roman warming, or the medieval warming. And in these three periods, there was only a fraction of the people on this planet that there is today. Okay, so to say that this is a serious issue right here is absolute nonsense. Look at what we're just pulling out of the little ice age, for goodness sake. and we have been a full, up here, nearly 3 degrees warmer than the present day temperature, and we're still here, the planet's still here. And of course during these cooler periods we have dropped, well, depending on where you're starting from, but from here we went from it's 1.5 degrees drop in temperature. Okay, so the other thing I'd like to point out is you'll notice that there is no point in time in this chart where you see these dips and peaks, valleys and peaks. There is no point in time where it really goes this way or it's a little wave. No, the weather is always changing. We're always in a state of climate change. And this is the second chart that I wanted to show you. And now I know this is quite small on the camera, but I think you can see here this red line. Okay, where my cursor is, follow this red line up, and the black line. Okay, the black line is temperature. Okay, so the temperature starts to increase here, and after the temperature increases, then the CO2 increases. And of course when the temperature starts to decline, the CO2 carries on a little bit and then it starts to decline. So yes, CO2 is connected to temperature, but in a reverse fashion. It is the warming that causes the CO2 to increase. Now this is from the Vostok ice core samples, and these analyses were all done by the University of Heidelberg, and as far as I know that's a reputable university. And again, I don't know if you can make out, this is 740,000 years before present. Okay, and as you can clearly see here today in this area here, this is present day temperature datum line. So we've had several periods where we have been a lot warmer than we have been than we are right now, and a lot more time spent below that temperature. And if you were a betting person and somebody were to bet you that whether it was going to warm or cool, looking at this chart over 750,000 years, I would be betting on cooler than the present day temperature, not warmer than the present day temperature. Okay, now these cycles are connected with the sun, and we have gone into a low flare period, and so we are going back down into the cool. Okay, so this is what we're going to have to be doing in the future. This is in the Netherlands, and they are growing under glass. And that's what we're going to have to start doing. This is in Kurdistan, farmers turn to greenhouse growing. You can alter your environment under a greenhouse enough to withstand fairly significant weather changes. I mean, they've dug trenches now up in Alaska and put a dome over the top, a greenhouse dome, and they're growing below the frost line. Okay, and they are actually growing stuff in basically Arctic and subarctic conditions. So there you go. It is possible. Those solar rays, if you can trap those solar rays, and I'll tell you, if you like your vegetables, you seriously need to think about growing your own. I know people tell me that, oh yeah, it's cheap enough to do this. I've heard all kinds of different reasons why people can't put a garden in, but I think that this is going to really be a shockwave. Oh yes, another thing I've done is I downloaded the Alta report from Cliff High, the WebBot report, and Alta stands for Asymmetric Linguistic Trends Analysis Intelligent Report from Half Past Human. Now it's an interesting concept. Cliff is a programmer with incredible experience. And he did some experimentation for some Wall Street companies about linguistic programming, and this was trying to use word frequency or linguistic trends on the internet to use as a predictive tool. Anyway, it turned out to be far more successful than I think even he thought, and so he's gone on now and privately made a much more sophisticated algorithm which essentially scours the internet for word usage, and by the types of words that are used and the amounts of words that are used, there's a linguistic analysis takes place, and from that there are some predictive things that come out of it. Now, what it's based on is the concept that there is a big consciousness, it is a big energy field that we all live in, and if that energy field, if any of that information were to bleed through into our consciousness, it would happen in a linguistic way, which would make us choose one word over another. To I'm a little concerned. I'm in imminent danger. You can see there'll be a whole array of words that I would choose between those 2 points to describe the situation I'm in, and if there's enough people using words that fall between those 2 extremes, you can get a sense that there is some kind of imminent danger. So that's how it works. It might sound a little odd. It's certainly in what Cliff calls the woo-woo world, because you can explain it, but it's hard to understand in today's concept in the material world. But an interesting thing that an experiment that was came out of MIT. When would that be? Back in the 70s or early 80s, and they wanted to try and prove if there was a mass consciousness. And so what they did was they created these random number producers. Okay, it's just like a little computer program, and it just continually produced a steady stream of random numbers. Okay, and they placed those little algorithms, although it was in actually a little egg, they put those eggs at different places in the world, and they figured if there was a group consciousness, when some event happened that affected the whole world, those random numbers would become a little less random during that period of time, and they would do it all over the world. It would be a recognizable phenomena. And actually that's what they found happened when Princess Di died in the accident. There was a worldwide movement to mourn her death, and guess what? The random number stream changed all over the world. And of course they've done this in many situations now. 9/11 was another event that shook the world, and that's maybe something we're going to get into a little bit later. But basically it proved that there is a mass consciousness on this planet, that somehow we are all interconnected with our thoughts. So there is evidence that the webbot is on the right trail. And anyway, they're extremely interesting, they're very well written, and I'm thinking in this day and age, when you look around the world and some of the unfolding events, any kind of insight, even if it makes you think about your situation, and that's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to get you to think about what's coming down the track and to try and mitigate that in your own life, especially here in Canada, because we are on the edge of good growing zones. So any change in weather here is going to have a big effect on local farming, local gardening, and everything to do with food production. Because you remember, cattle eat grain and grass, and so grazing animals will be having a tough time if the grass isn't growing properly. Grains won't grow. Rain, of course, this is the biggest thing. If we go into a cooling event, I think you're going to see more rains and hard rains. They may not be as frequent, but they will be, when they come, they are going to be hard rains. and this is not good for standing crops like wheat and oats and barley, canola, these kind of things. They're very susceptible, and once they hit the ground they start to mold up immediately. So this is a big issue.